Hi, Florin.
Hello. Hey, everyone.
I can't wait for your talk because I'm personally responsible for this talk in our conference, because exactly at the time we were working on the conference, I was switched from VS Code to GoLand, and I found I don't know how to use it. So what could I do as a head of programming committee? I can organize the talk. So please.
Okay, that's one way to learn our tools, I guess. So hey everyone, thank you for having me here today. My name is Florin. I work for JetBrains, and today I will give you a hands-on experience on how to use GoLand, our Go IDE. And it's not just for Go, it's also, you can work with TypeScript and so on, and all the modern web frameworks too. So don't be scared about the idea of it's a Go IDE. It's much more than that. However, today I'm going to focus only on the Go specific parts because we are at a Go conference and we are Go developers. And I'll try to make this interesting for you, hopefully. So let's start with our first tip. Whenever you start the IDE after you install it for the first time around, you'll probably see a window just like this. And it has lots of buttons. There's a bunch of like toolbars here, all over the place and so on. There's tabs and so on. So one thing that you can do to get rid of all of this and focus on your code is that you can press the shortcut for search everywhere, which is Shift-Shift, both on Windows, Mac, and on Linux. And you can say Zen mode or enter Zen mode. And as you can see, I don't need to type the whole thing. And this is going to enter the Zen mode. What this does is basically removes all the toolbars and unnecessary IDE parts so that you can focus on the code, as I was saying. Now, everything that I'm going to show you today is available in a GitHub repository. So if you would like to test what I'm doing here for yourself, you can go to github.com, and let me drag the window here. And under my username, DL Sniper, GoLand tips and tricks repository, you can find all the tips that I'm going to show today, and you can test them for yourself. Okay, with this out of the way, let's see what we'll learn today. So we have a few main sections. We have completion, editing, Go modules, navigation, refactoring, and then finally running, testing, and debugging, because those are important things. Depending on the time limit, we may hit all the tips and tricks in this session, or I may skip a few so that I can take your questions at the end of the session. But as I said, you can go there and like test things for yourself too. So one of the first questions that you may ask is, okay, so there's nothing here anymore that I can see to navigate around files. How do I do that? Well, if you press the shortcut Alt F1 or Option F1 on Mac, and you'll see all the shortcuts at the bottom here, you'll be able to bring up the project view tool window, and then you can start navigating and so on. But I propose a different way, and that way is using the jump to navigation bar, which allows you to navigate, I would say, a bit better. You do that by invoking the navigation bar again, the shortcut, and then you can basically start moving around with the arrows or using completion. So for example, let's say I want to jump to completion folder, I'm going to jump to the completion folder. And then I'm going to jump to the tip 1, and I'm just pressing enter right now, and then enter, and that's it. I'm here in the first tip that we have. Now, the first real tip that I want to show you is nothing that complicated, but it's just for us to get us started a bit. And it's probably something that you can expect from any reasonable editor or IDE these days. You'd normally start with afmt.println and so on, but you can also just say println. And you'll see that the IDE will also match unimported packages for our println statement. And when we select it, it's going to import it automatically. So now we can just not have to worry about the package name, or perhaps we don't necessarily know in which package our identifier is, so that we can just start typing and so on. Second tip from here. So let's say that I want to complete this, right? And it accepts like the handler function signature. It has that long signature that I don't know what to do. Normally, I can invoke the basic completion, and I would see something like this, but it has a bunch of other variations on completion, and some of them may not necessarily be useful here. What you can do is you can invoke the smart type completion, and that will suggest strictly the types that match against what we have. It's also going to suggest from the imported packages that we have any types that may match, or from the standard library or our code. And in this case, it does know that we want to have a handler function here, so a closure, and I can just start typing that as a completion option, and then move forward with my completion. So that makes things a lot easier to complete whenever you may not be certain what completion type to choose from the completion. Moving forward, let's say that we just started typing the send message, we finished typing it, and then I need to add a variable. So what would you do? You would somehow either go to the beginning and then start typing, but then you have to go to the end and so on. The alternative would be to use postfix completions and press dot and then say dot var. So postfix completions extend the regular items, let's say, symbols and functions and so on and so forth, with additional completion options. You don't get this in Go by default, right? There's no dot var. But what it can do is basically add templated text to your existing code that you just typed. And in this case, I'm going to show you that, yeah, we have a message here, we have an error, and then let's say I want to handle the error. How do I do that? I say error dot, I don't know, let's say return error or return value. So I'm in the main function. There's nothing to return here, but if it were, the IDE would put it here and would say return the error itself. And that's it. Like, that's how we do postfix completion. And yeah, I just handled the error in a quick way using GoLand. The next item that I want to show you, it's a bit similar to the postfix completion. And it works around the same. So normally, if you invoke basic completion at the end of this, you get the postfix completion items. But what if you know that there is somewhere out there a function that accepts a string as a first parameter, and it's probably called toTitle or something like that? Well, then you invoke completion again, or you say control space space twice, and then you start typing toTitle. And that's it. Like, we found the function that has the first parameter, the type of the left identifier that we have. So in this case, it's a string that accepts a string as a first parameter, and it's called toTitle. Now, depending on your project, this might be a bit slower. So I do recommend that you start typing at least the first couple of letters before you invoke it. Still, as you see, it's going to import the strings package for us too. So that's pretty much a good way to start exploring an unknown code base. Next on the list, we have this one, and it's probably one of my favorites. Like we had postfix completions appearing at the end of what we want to start typing, we also have live templates, which basically work like postfix completions, just in reverse. You type them first and then type the rest of your code. So in this case, I chose something that I frequently have no clue how to complete properly or how to write properly, and it's the connection string to a database. And what I can do is I can say dbds, in my case, because that's how I chose to name the item itself. And now I have an entire code snippet added for myself, and I can customize anything that I want. So this is the username, this is the password, the database, and so on and so forth. So that's pretty cool, I would say, right? the IDE itself has some sort of like templates built in. For example, if I start typing if after a value that can be nil, I'm going to see this one. So if value is not nil. And I can say if error is not nil. So that's another way to add a error handling quickly to my code, or anything that I may need to check against being nil or not. Similar to live templates, we have this one, and I'm going to do it again in case you missed it. So if I need to add another return value to the function that I have, right? Normally, I would need to go to the beginning, add the parentheses, go to the end, add the parentheses, and so on. But here, I just need to type the comma, and that's it. And I can say, oh, I want to add an error here. And then, finally, I was mentioning earlier that the IDE has some built-in sort of live templates that can help you typing. This is the case for return as well. So if you're used to Go returns as a tool, or you just want to say, oh, I want to return, but I want to return something that it's the 0 value, and just maybe change one of the values in the process, like this one. I'm going to return 0 here, because the IDE knows that's the 0 value. And here, maybe I'm going to say fmt error f, some error, right? And that's it. I can customize this as I need to. Moving forward, what I'm going to show you is something that will save some keystrokes. So whenever I start typing HTTP or something like that, that's a lot, right? And if I were to type IO read write closer, it's probably going to end the conference stream until I finish typing it. So instead of typing IO read write closer, I can just type read write closer. So I just need to remember a few letters from my identifier, and then the IDE will do the rest. Okay, let's say that we are still in the realm of completion. And here, I just want to change the printf statement to something else, like print line. How would I do it? I would come here, select this, delete, and then replace. Or I would just say print line and press enter. But that doesn't really give us what we need, because then I need to write, to delete everything to the right. Another way to do this is I can press tab instead. So if I use tab instead of enter when I'm selecting a completion item, it's going to replace everything from the right side of the cursor until I encounter another identifier or type or parentheses in this case. So it's going to replace the right side identifier for me automatically. And that is pretty cool and useful if you want to quickly do changes in your code base. Different feature that you don't necessarily need to do anything, but it's there just for you to know, is the fact that when you invoke completion here in a type assertion, the IDE will automatically try to assert your types and see if they match the interface that you have. So in this case, I have a value v, which is IO reader, and I know that my type implements actually the IO reader interface. Actually, it implements the read-write closer interface. So the IDE knows that, and it offers me to complete that one for helping me out in my code. Second to last tip here is also something that will help you save time when you're typing. And in this case, for example, how do I name parameters? That's a hard question usually, right? Naming is hard. So let's say that I just need to type the response writer and let the IDE name the parameter for me. Or I have a pointer to the request on HTTP, and the IDE will automatically name the parameter. You may say, oh, okay, but that's built in and so on. What happens if you type another request and you choose RPC? Well, in that case, the IDE will say, well, you already have an R there, so let's name this one request. So you don't need to necessarily figure out how to name your parameters anymore, the IDE can do that for you. And finally, what I'm going to show you is available only if you're using our upcoming GoLand 2020.3 IDE, which is now in EAP, or Early Access program. And it's sort of like an open beta where you can come download. It's free to try. It's also available for 30 days without a license, but we roll this about once a week, or maybe sometimes every 2 weeks, depending on features that we have. And what it gives you is the ability to interact even more with us by saying, hey, I kind of want this feature, and I tested the new feature, and I like it, or I want to adjust it, and so on. Okay, enough with the EAP. Back on what the feature is. So we all love the GoLand time formatting, right? What if I would tell you that there's a better way to write that? So YYY becomes 2006, because that's what Go date and time expects YYY to be, right? Let's say that I want to have the month. That's, again, the month, the day, hour, minute, and of course, seconds. Oh, and if you want the time zone, yeah, there's different formats in the Go standard library. Let's just go with this one. So hopefully that should be something that you'll use. And it works not only for the format, or also works for parsing date. And yeah, I'm not going to show you the whole thing here, but you get the idea. It's a lot easier now to write date parsing code. Hopefully. I hope you'll like this feature. Okay, that ends our completion tips. We finished the first 10 of them. Let's jump quickly to editing. So I use the mouse throughout the presentation, but if I were to say, well, I kind of want you to select this one, or I don't know, let's just, I don't know, select text here. How do you select it? Well, I want to complete something from here, right? So I can't select it like this because I have camel humps turned on when selection. So if I were to come here, I paste it here, and that's not ideal. But what you can do is you can use the cyclic expand word and have that work accordingly. Now, it completed the one above because it goes above. But if I undo and I say complete the one below me, it's going to go below. So there you go. I just completed the convert to int inside the string. Not only that, but this works outside of strings too. What I'm showing you right now is the ability that it works inside of strings as well. Next, let's say that here we have parameters, right? And I can invoke parameter information. I get to see their type, their name, and so on. And I get to complete that. But did you know it also works inside of structures too? So here now I can know for sure what I'm completing here. Or if I'm not doing that, substructures, and I can invoke parameter there too. So I get completion for those as well. And it even works in existing parts too, so that, you know, let's say I'm going here, it understands automatically where it is and so on. Oh, and not only that, but I can say fill all fields. And yeah, this is less impressive than completing the whole structure with fields, but still, you get the idea. You can fill out the whole structure quickly. Our third tip is related to one of the topics that's dear to me when I'm writing APIs, specifically JSON APIs, and that is writing the JSON for tests, for example. So how do you write JSON? You come here, you say this, and then you're like, okay, I need to somehow escape this. It's not good enough, and so on. And you probably will say, but Florin, Go has a cool feature. You can use row strings. And I'm like, yeah, sure, I can use row strings, but if I do something like this, I don't necessarily know that I have a mistake here. So what do? We press Alt-Enter. We say inject language. We say JSON in this case. And here we can actually see that we have an error now because it recognizes that this is a JSON. Even better, if I press Alt-Enter again, I can say edit JSON fragment. And well, now I can do anything like this, for example. Not only that, but I can press Enter here. I can do formatting and so on, and it's going to automatically format. If I were inside of a regular double-quoted string, it will also escape things for me. So it's smart enough to know when identifiers or anything like that needs escaping. So that is a pretty useful feature, I hope. And in our next tip, I'm going to show you something similar, I would say. Now, let's say that I'm in a Go template, text template, HTML template, it works the same. And I'm typing this. Now, if I type the dot, I can invoke completion. And you maybe wonder, okay, but how did you do that? And what's this funny comment here? Well, that funny comment, let me show you where it comes from. That funny comment comes from the fact that when I'm in a regular template, I can say specify dot type, and then I can choose any type that I have in my project. Once I choose the project, I get this comment here, and then you can place it wherever you want. So as I placed it, for example, here at the beginning to make to keep the same format, that comment provides the IDE with the necessary information to know that all the fields or everything after dot belongs to this type here. So now I can easily complete code in live templates too, in Go templates too. Not only that, but there's a comment here called language equals Go template, and that's another way that you can make injection permanent across IDEs, across colleagues, and so on and so forth. And that's the name of the Go template language. You can also type things like, I don't know, let's say JSON, and it's going to try to put JSON there, but that's not as useful. Halfway through our editing tips, we see another interesting series of tips, I would hope. Let's say I'm prototyping code, and I'm happy with this, but I haven't created my message type. So what do? Press Alt-Enter, create that. Now, how do I go back to the field? You may say, well, I can press F2, and that's going to jump me automatically to the next error based on the severity of the errors. And I can say create a field, and then create a field again. And now I have created a field. And how do I make them export as the JSON that I need to? Well, I can jump in column selection mode or multi-cursor if I want to, or any similar way to get multiple cursors on the screen. And I can start typing JSON here, select this, and that's it. I can also control how the template looks like, and if it generates a snake case or camel case or any other formatting that I need to apply to the fields here. Let me exit from this mode. So that's how you quickly add tags to the fields for a structure. Cool. As I was saying earlier, I'm using the mouse to select a bunch of things. And if you tell me, well, Florin, select the field here and then select the whole thing actually and so on, how would I do it? Well, I could just say expand selection. And it's semantically going to expand my selection so that it matches the semantics of the file, or in this case, the Go code itself. And I can also shrink the selection, again, semantic, so that I can select only the part that I need, which may make sense if I want to, let's say, paste in some documentation or something like that. How do I select all the field one? Well, I can select that and then rename it and so on and so forth. Or I can say add selection for the next occurrence, and then similarly continue with that. Or I can unselect if I want. And there's also a jump selection and so on. Now, just because I've shown you how to do this, don't go ahead and use this feature to rename something. There are better ways for this, and I promise I'm going to show them to you a bit later. Okay, second to last on the editing tips. First of all, like here, how do I get completion to work? And let's say add a comment. I add a comment by pressing Alt-Enter on the field and say add comment. It's going to automatically add the field name, and then I can say add to field belongs to, let's say, demo type. And if I invoke completion, it shows me the demo type. So writing any comments became a lot easier now. Not only that, but if I want to structure my code better, I can also use some of the new features in 2020.2 to expand the signature or reuse it. What does expanding signature does? Well, allows me to have all the parameters with their own type in case I want to. Maybe that's how the coding standard works for my company. I can put them on a separate line if it makes sense, if it's easier. I can reuse the signature types, and that's going to compact automatically everything. So there are different ways that I can adjust my code. I can also do the same for function calls. For example, I can put arguments on a separate line. And thanks to the parameter hints here, I'm going to see what happens there. And finally, if I go to settings preferences, and it gives you the whole path here for where to go, but I'm going to go manually just in case. So for example, code style, go, and then wrapping and braces. So editor, code style, go, wrapping and braces. Well, let me make this a bit bigger. We have a tiny feature, I would say, here that doesn't allow us to do the full preview. Anyway, I can choose how I automatically get these when I'm writing code. So I can automatically say wrap if the parameter list is too long, always wrap them, chop them down if needed, and so on and so forth. And you can control this for function calls, function parameters, return parameters, and so on and so forth. Composite literals too, meaning for anything like this. And I think that was our last tip from editing. Inspections quickly, I won't bother you too much with that because I have a few other interesting things that I want to show you. I'm just going to show you the latest inspection, which will understand if you are losing the cancel function when you're doing an early return in your code. So what you see here is that I have a news function, okay, fine, whatever, but I also have a execution path that doesn't call the cancel. So that may result in a context leak. What it does is basically it says, well, here I am losing the context, right? Because I'm not calling cancel first. Now, also here, it highlights something for me. And it says that, in this case, you may lose the context too, because if the condition is not true here, then your code would go on and return at some point. So you're losing cancel on that path too. So as soon as I finish one of these, it's going to complete automatically. Now we have a better highlighting if you fix all the other errors, and the IDE will help you and assist you trying to sort out all the context lost along the way, right? So if I would say cancel here, yeah, that's it. I fixed all the code and everything is fine now. So working with context will become a bit easier as of the newer version. I'm going to skip the modules because that's a lot and we are running a bit out of time. I'm going to go to navigation because there's like only a few of them here. Navigation on the files can happen quickly. So let's say I'm selecting this because it's easier. If I press the right shortcut, it jumps to the file that I need. I can come back and the switcher is going to show you everything that I have. Normally, I would release it really, really quick, so not to see it and so on. And that's a feature, but you can release it slower as well. So in case of presentations, let's say. You can also use the recent files to have that persistent, and you can take the hands off the keyboard, or you can press the same shortcut for that to only see the changed files, so the files that you recently changed, for example. And you can also go to recent locations, which is similar, but it also allows you to see the snippets of the code of the places you were at. Again, if you press show changed, it's going to show the changed places. You can also do filtering here. So if I say cancel, it's going to search for the canceled parts. So hopefully that's going to give you a bit of better navigation, which is useful, especially if you don't have any project files like I have here. Let's go back here to our FMT file. So first I want to show you the, let's say the file structure, which is invoked using the shortcut. And that shows you all the identifiers that are defined in the file. You can go to any of them. So for example, FMT, I don't know, float here. And what you can also do is that when you invoke this and press Control F12 again, this one will show you all the identifiers that are defined in the whole package. So not just the file structure, it's the package structure. So you can navigate around and do whatever you need. And then let's say if I'm pressing Alt F1, the selection or option, I think it's on Mac, you can say selecting project view, and it's gonna go to the project view and select the file automatically for you, in case you need to locate it for whatever reason. And it works not only for the Go SDK, it works for modules too. Everything that I've shown you here is actually a Go modules project, so everything should be fine. Okay, back on our tips. Second to last one from the navigation. This one is one of my favorite for exploring new code bases. Let's say that I have a type that I want to see what other types belong to it and so on. What, let's say, types implement that in the case of an interface. And when I'm invoking the type hierarchy feature, I can quickly show that all the types that I have here implement that. How do I know that? Well, I can bring out the quick definition here and have a look at all the types that I have, or I can bring out quick documentation. And in the quick documentation, I will see that the reader interface is actually implemented thanks to the read method that I have here, right? So it's all good. Moving on, we also have a similar thing for function calls. So if you say, okay, for the reader interface, where are all the types that are implementing, that are calling the read method of the interface? Well, it's here. And I can drill down as much as I need to and have a look at, yeah, whatever. It works a bit slower depending on the code base because it literally has to go through all the possible places where this happens and then identifies all the calls and so on. But as I said, you can invoke quick definition and have a look at every function without having to do that. By the way, this quick definition thing works for completion too, works for file identifiers and so on. I'll let you discover those yourself. And finally, I've shown you earlier something that we have new and useful for writing documentation, which is the completion support. But what if I would tell you that we also have identifier highlighting, and you can also view their documentation, or in this case, their signature, and you can even jump to them. So now you can have documentation that references the other identifiers, and you can jump back and forth them. So hopefully that should make reading documentation simpler. And let's jump back. See? Switcher, instant. I jump back to my tip. Finally, quickly refactorings. For the refactoring, I have I want to write quickly a type that implements the read-write closer interface. How do I do that? I say generate, implement methods. I'm creating a new type. I'm using the famous read-write closer too long to write interface. And that's it. I now have implemented the read-write closer interface by creating a new type too. Next step, how do I change a signature and rename the function and so on? Well, I can remember this with the refactor this method, right? So you just need to know one shortcut for all the refactoring needs that you need. Refactor this. And then you can access a rename or change signature. And in change signature, you can change the name. You can flip parameters around. So for example, I chose to flip these two around. I can add a new result. So I can say, well, I want to add a type of error. I don't need to give it a name because I don't have a name. I'm going to leave blank the default return, and I'm going to reuse that. So I've exchanged the parameter places. I could change the function name if I want to. And I also added the error type. Not only that, but I can access the refactor this, say move, and then when I move this, I can say add here, refactor. And it's going to yell at me, hey, you're trying to move a function that's private, that's unexported, right, into another place, but you're still calling it from main. So you should probably export that first. And that's it. And if you don't believe me, here it is. I have it here. Not only that, I can say undo the move, and it undid the move, and it's back. So quite useful, I would say. Let me use the mouse. You should never use the mouse. No, joking. You should use the mouse if you're comfortable with. To jump to the next step. So how do I create a common interface for a type that I have? Well, again, let's say I'm here. Refactor this, extract an interface, call it demoer. I lack a better name right now. Where do I want to place this? Well, I want to place this in the main file, under the main package, refactor, and that's it. Now I've extracted my interface. Okay, and last tip here. I want to introduce a constant. How do I do that? Refactor this, introduce constant, replace all the message here, and do an inline. Finally, I'm going to skip some of the tips here because they might be taking a bit too long. I'm just going to go through them quickly to see that you can, for example, place a completion, place a breakpoint here. How do we invoke the properties? You can invoke the properties like this, and then you can say error, and then you get completion. So I think this is pretty important, right? And then the code would stop at the breakpoint not being nil. Gonna skip that. You'll have to trust me, or try for yourself. How do I generate a test? Well, a refactor this doesn't generate a test. How do I generate a test? Using the generate and test function. And then, yeah, this is going to launch a test generation for me. Quickly, let's do this. Let's give it a name. Here, I want to say, I want the fields, field 1. I want the args 1, and then value 3. I'm not showing the gutter icons by default, but you can configure the gutter icons to be shown so that it makes it easier for you to run. And something that's new is that we have gutter icons for the tests here. So for the subtests here, I have the main icon to run, but I also have for subtests the ability to run directly from a subtest. There are some caveats on like when we can infer that automatically, but that's it. I'm not gonna show you more on this one. Let me jump to the last one to give you a chance to, oh, yeah, that was the same one. Jump to the second to last one. So one thing that I would like to show you, and this is the last tip to give you a chance to ask questions, is the ability for us to run a debugger. And yeah, I mean, there's nothing special here. What if I would go here and I would say under this code, let's put some breakpoint, and you can drag breakpoints here. I can make a condition RID equals well greater than 250, and let's run the debugger again. So you've seen that you can basically drag the debugger the debug breakpoints too, so that is fine. It seems that the demo doesn't want to hold up with me. Come on. Finally. One useful thing that we added is that we have a bunch of Go routines here that are too long. If you press on the dump Go routines button, what this will do is it's going to take a dump of all the Go routines that are running. And it's going to tell you that you have 83 Go routines, out of which only 24 are having unique stacks. So it's going to list those that have unique stacks, meaning this is a bit different than this one. See, product handler, product handler, products handler, product handler, and login handler. And I can say, oh, I don't want to see the Go routines that are here. So I can say hide Go routine or hide all the Go routines. And when you hide them, let's hide this one too. When you hide them, you'll find them here. Still accessible, you can still have a look at them and so on. That is it for today. Unfortunately, that's the time. There are many more in the GitHub repository that I've shown you. I would be happy to take some questions. And yeah, thank you for having me here today. Thanks to the organizers, and thank you for watching. This is the repository where you can get the source code and try it for yourself. Have a look at them and so on.
Okay, thank you very much, Florin. I counted just 3 tips I already know, so it was really useful. They have a couple of questions in the chat at the moment. Let me check them.
Sure.
Okay. First question is, what's the so nice font you are using?
Oh, it's called the JetBrains Mono. It's our own font. Let me show it to you.
Yeah. Another question is this time formatting feature, which is killer feature, definitely. Is it available in IDE in general with GoLand plugin, or just GoLand?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. IntelliJ IDEA with Go plugin has basically the same features as the GoLand IDE. What I'm showing you right now, it's available. It's going to be available in 1 month in the stable release, but until then, it's only in our test, well, upcoming version, I would say, which you can find it Go next version.
Okay, thank you. Another question. Sometimes after updating the IDE, the plugins in use are disabled. Do you plan to automatically update plugins when new versions are available? And if there is a need to update them to compatibility with the new version of IDE?
Have a look at the toolbox. So our toolbox, when it updates out the IDE, first of all, it's free. But when it updates the IDEs that you have installed, it also updates the plugins. So you don't have to worry about this anymore.
Another question. Does the debugger already support watching not just variables, but function calls as well? I heard that there were some limitation in Delve that did not allow this.
I'm going to answer this. Delve allows us to do function calls, but the Go runtime is limited. In many places, you can call a function, but you also may have problems calling that function in other places. That is because of the Go runtime and the way it works. So you can watch a function, but I don't think it's recommended. It also might trigger, because of the way the debugger and, well, the runtime, again, the Go runtime itself being responsible for this, the way it resumes the execution of the code for the function call to be done could trigger side effects in your binary. So it might not be a good idea to watch function calls. I would recommend not doing that. Watch specific values if you have to.
Okay, thank you. And I have one question myself.
Sure.
Which language the linters embedded to the GoLand are written on?
So the linters are written, I think most of them, if not all of them, in Java. Not sure about Kotlin yet because I haven't looked into the source code of the IDE in a while, to be honest. But you can also plug in your linters too. There's a file watcher API and so on. I'm happy to take it to the chat room if you want. I know the next speaker is anxious to get on the stream too. So
yeah. Anyway, we can contribute a linter which will not be called through the file watcher, but through which will be embedded to the GoLand. Is it any procedure to suggest your own linter?
Let's take this to the other chat, but yes, you can go to our tracker, to utrack, and say, hey, look, I want to have this inspection done, and the team will do it. Or you can write a plugin for GoLand that is generally rather straightforward to do. There are open source examples of Go inspections that I can show. And yeah, the procedure would be to create a standalone plugin and distribute it with the marketplace then.
Okay, that's great. Okay, Florin, we are running out of time, so could you please visit the special chat?
Sure.
People are, I'm sure, waiting for you to ask you something. And thank you very much.
Thank you for having me here today. Thank you.